Welcome to Heart Tales. Before we begin today's story, please take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Right before graduation, I confessed my feelings to the campus belle, my absolute goddess, but she rejected me flat. When I pressed for a reason, my goddess replied, "I like guys who are smart and brave." I countered immediately, "Last week when your boat was sinking on the lake and you went under, did you already forget who jumped in to pull you out and resuscitate you?" My goddess went dead silent for 2 seconds. "Well, you are certainly brave, but are you smart?" I also paused for 2 seconds. "Why don't you guess why only your boat developed a massive leak?" The exact millisecond that sentence left my mouth, Elena Evans called my line. I flipped my wrist and rejected it instantly. Elena refused to surrender. By the time I boarded the plane, she had aggressively blown up my phone with a grand total of 18 missed calls. I systematically blocked every single execution. Glancing at the text message Elena sent over, "You are in Capital City right now, aren't you? Just you wait." I powered down my phone, stepped onto the plane with deep satisfaction, and celebrated the fact that Elena was finally chasing after me for once. As for why her boat took on water, how on earth should I know? I'm not a shipwright. 2 hours later, the plane touched down. I powered my phone back on to find that Elena had proactively flooded my inbox with a barrage of text messages. It was remarkably comforting. "I've booked my ticket. I'm at the airport. My flight lands at 7 p.m., you absolute jerk. Just you wait." I let out a heavy sigh. So this was the terrifying thrill of being hunted down for revenge. Truly spine-chilling. Over the next 2 hours, I flawlessly executed a swift sequence of movements, retrieved my luggage, grabbed dinner, and booked an airport hotel. Once I checked into a room less than 500 meters away from the terminal, total peace of mind finally set in. Elena would fundamentally never anticipate that I was playing a game of hide and seek right under her nose. At 7:30 p.m., Elena's call materialized again. I casually picked it up. "What's the play? State your business, quick." Elena's voice dropped to a freezing register. "What floor?" I stood entirely paralyzed for a beat. "Excuse me? The airport hotel you are currently staying at. Before. What room number?" I bounced straight up from the bed, completely stunned. "No way. How on earth did you track me down?" Elena let out a cold, calculating laugh. "From the millisecond you stepped off that plane until now, your WeChat step counter hasn't even hit 1,000. How do you think I figured it out?" I used to claim that I simply harbored a preference for brilliant, calculating women. Naturally, Elena's intelligence profile was clearly a bit too much to handle. Feeling profoundly anxious, I marched down to the hotel lobby to receive her. The moment Elena locked eyes with me, her brows knitted together tightly. "Why did you come down here wearing nothing but slippers? It's freezing outside." I offered a placating smile. "Didn't I rush down just to see your face a fraction of a second faster?" Hearing this, a dark shadow crossed her beautiful features. She aggressively grabbed the hood of my hoodie and interrogated, "What was the deal with that boat?" I threw my hands up in immediate surrender. "I possess absolute zero knowledge. Stop playing dumb. I genuinely have no idea." My face contorted into a deeply aggrieved expression. If I knew it would backfire like this, I would never have acted so foolishly. Just then, another group of guests materialized in the lobby. As the sliding doors cycled open and shut, a howling gust of freezing wind swept violently into the space. Elena let out an amused, speechless laugh. She locked her eyes on me for a beat, then suddenly shoved her massive suitcase right in front of my frame. "Sit on it." I blinked in confusion. Elena let out a sharp scoff. "The floor is so freezing you're basically tap dancing. Sit on it and keep your feet off the ground." "Oh, all right," I murmured, bracing my hands on the suitcase to hop up and seat myself. Watching her pull off her own scarf to wrap it around my neck against the chill, I couldn't help but blurt out, "Elena, you know, flying such a long distance just to track me down couldn't have been easy. Just what if you actually listened to me for once? What if you let me protect you, just this one time?" How could a mouth with a normal body temperature of 36.5 degrees utter words that felt absolutely freezing? Both Elena and I instantly froze. The very next second, my survival instinct kicked in. I leapt off the suitcase and bolted. You heartless woman. Even though I like you this much, next time I am genuinely going to capsize your boat. Elena's cold scoff echoed from behind. I knew it was you. In reality, I wasn't actually the one who tampered with her boat. Those words were just my way of blowing off steam. Not long after I retreated to my room, Elena fired off another text. Come out. I pretended not to see it and continued mindlessly scrolling through videos. Elena texted again. I ordered late-night takeout. I swallowed my saliva. Honestly, I was getting a bit hungry. Eat it or don't, it's entirely up to you. I left it right outside your door. My flight back is at 9 p.m., so I'm leaving now. Staring at the message, I froze. She's leaving already? Despite hesitating for a few seconds, I still scrambled out of bed. I wanted to crack the door open and poke my head out to check the hallway. The exact millisecond I threw the door open, my face slammed directly into a soft, warm spot. It was a chest clad in a tight-fitting black sweater. Why on earth do you poke your head out first when leaving a room? Elena's face flushed a brilliant crimson as she braced her hands against my shoulders to push me back. I desperately wanted to mount a defense, but my biological reaction triggered faster than my vocal cords. A sudden wave of heat surged straight to my nose. You're having a nosebleed. I must state for the record in my own defense, the nosebleed was purely caused by the hotel's air conditioning drying out the room. It shared absolute zero correlation with the fact that a well-endowed Elena was standing right in front of me in a form-fitting, black turtleneck sweater. Elena pressed a cold towel against my forehead, her expression remarkably complex. Austin, I'm not trying to mess with you, but I've genuinely rarely seen a guy get a nosebleed for that specific reason. Closing my eyes, I answered with absolute sincerity, then it's definitely because the rooms they stayed in weren't dry enough. Elena let out another helpless, amused laugh. By the way, weren't you supposed to catch a flight at 9 p.m.? I glanced over at the clock. It was already 9:10 p.m. Elena, you missed your flight. You're super late. Elena casually waved her phone in front of my face. I already rebooked it for tomorrow. Hearing this, I was a bit dazed. Are you really going back tomorrow? Elena looked straight at me. Of course, why else would I stay? I stammered. I thought you were just playing hard to get. Elena clicked her tongue. Why on earth would I lie to you about something like that? I blinked. Then what is worth lying to me about? Elena didn't bother to reply to my nonsense. She took the cold towel off my forehead and went over to reheat the late-night takeout. Once it was ready, she picked up a piece with her chopsticks and stuffed it right into my mouth. Just eat your food. Wow, my goddess is actually providing a personal feeding service? This nosebleed was absolutely worth it. I chewed, swallowed, and immediately opened my mouth wide, waiting for the second bite. If your hands are just going to hang there, you might as well donate them to someone in need. The second bite didn't come. Instead, I was hit by Elena's chilling declaration, and stop opening your mouth so wide, you look like a complete idiot. Honestly, I often worry that if Elena wears lipstick, she might accidentally poison herself whenever she licks her bottom lip. If that's the case, will I get poisoned when I kiss her in the future? This is a profound question that truly warrants deep theological consideration. Once we finished the food, Elena started gathering her things to head back to her own room. I noticed a small box left on the table. What's this? Elena glanced over. Chocolates. I just added them to the order to hit the minimum delivery fee. I opened it up and caught a remarkably unique scent. There were 6 chocolates in total. Naturally, I left the prettiest one for Elena and solemnly devoured the remaining 5 ugly-looking ones myself. Elena came back inside after tossing the trash out the door and spotted the solitary chocolate resting on the table. She immediately muttered a sequence of 3 words. Right, right, right. See that? I knew it. She's incredibly picky and only likes beautiful things. By that logic, she should absolutely adore me. My deduction was flawless. Elena froze in her tracks. What? I blinked, repeating the thought strictly in my head. Anyone who doesn't like Austin Wood is a complete fool. Elena didn't immediately launch into a verbal tirade against me, which genuinely surprised me. Can you actually read my mind? Elena marched over, snapped the solitary chocolate in half, and took a quick sniff. She let out a heavy sigh. Austin, can you sober up for a second? This is a high-percentage, liquor-filled chocolate. Liqueur chocolates? PFF, I can totally handle my alcohol. Propping my chin in my hands, I watched Elena hustle back and forth around the room, letting out a silly chuckle. Man, she is so adorable. I really want to kiss her. Elena's expression turned remarkably unnatural, her cheeks flushing a light shade of pink. She grabbed my arm to pull me up. Go to sleep right now. Stop throwing a drunken tantrum. I pouted in absolute dissatisfaction. I am not throwing a drunken tantrum, I am completely sober. Elena went along with it, placating me with a half-hearted, right. Song sober little Austin, now go to sleep. I let out a huff, brushing her hands away. Moving with absolute precision, my arms wrapped tightly around Elena's waist, pulling her flush against my chest. Staring directly into her features, which had instantly flushed a brilliant crimson, I asked with utmost seriousness, could a drunk person lock onto a target this perfectly? Elena ground her teeth. Austin, just you wait until tomorrow. I am going to settle this debt with you. Letting out a tense breath, she gave in to my pull and pushed me back toward the mattress. You got your hug, now can you finally sleep? I shook my head. Still not enough. Elena's face was now a dead ringer for a ripe tomato. Her voice practically squeaked past her grinding teeth. What else do you possibly want? Staring straight into her gorgeous face, I let out a silly, goofy grin. Can you give me a kiss? My hands remained firmly anchored on her waist. Seeing that her face was burning red but she hadn't actively rejected me, I swallowed hard, desperately trying to mask the chaotic thumping of my heart. I slowly leaned down closer, and, thud. I stared in absolute shock at Elena, who was now sitting flat on the floor. If you didn't want to kiss me, you could have just said so. Why on earth did you have to treat yourself so brutally? Austin would. Elena scrambled to her feet, her expression an unreadable storm, though it was probably just too fiercely red to decipher any clear emotion. She glared dead at me for a solid few seconds before turning on her heel and storming off. Yes, she actually left without uttering another single word. She spun around, marched out of the room, and completely vanished. I collapsed backward onto the bed, only lifting my head a long while later to look around the empty space. Glancing down at my palms, the lingering sensation of her soft warmth still hadn't faded. Realizing I could no longer play dumb, I reached over to the nightstand, plucked a piece of tissue paper, and quietly stuffed it into my nostril. Elena hadn't merely retreated to her own room, she had literally boarded a flight straight back to campus. Staring at her digital activity ledger on my phone, her metrics recorded a staggering 100 kilometers and over 20,000 steps in a single night. A profound wave of guilt washed over me. I'm incredibly sorry, but I am absolutely going to tease you again next time. When I woke up the following morning, it was already pushing 9 a.m. Guessing that Elena's anger had likely cooled down a bit, I proactively tested the waters by firing over a sticker of a cat poking its head out. Elena didn't offer a reply. She was clearly still throwing a tantrum. After a moment of deliberation, I pulled up a food delivery app, ordering her a milk tea along with a small pastry. I even custom-tailored a specific delivery note. Please remember, you are my absolute precious princess. If you ever get hurt or feel down, the entire world will burn. Satisfied with my cringy masterpiece, I finalized the transaction. Half an hour later, the app notified me that the delivery was successfully completed. Humming a cheerful tune, I texted Elena, "Your Highness, do you adore my sweet treat of love?" The message cleared, but it was met with a standalone, freezing response, "Get lost." I bounced straight up from the mattress. What on earth happened? Is she seriously still throwing a tantrum? That shouldn't be the case. Right at that exact second, a notification from the pastry shop popped up. "We are incredibly sorry, handsome client. Our system suffered a technical glitch earlier, so your custom note only displayed the initial beginning and the absolute final end characters." A profoundly ominous premonition slowly materialized in my chest. With trembling fingers, I hammered out a text. So what exactly did the recipient see on the note? The shop went dead silent for about half a minute before firing back a blunt, definitive 5-word reply. "Remember, you must die if you don't love me." Right. I'll die. I'll just go ahead and die, okay? I didn't even have the patience to read the shop's subsequent apologies. I frantically opened my chat with Elena. "It wasn't me, princess. Listen to my explanation." My princess remained ice-cold, offering absolute zero replies. After deliberating for a few seconds, I swiftly gathered my belongings, packed my luggage, and booked a flight straight back to campus. If you are going to apologize, you have to execute it with absolute sincerity. If you are chasing after someone, you need to maintain the proper posture of a suitor. I like Elena, so what's the big deal about making a quick U-turn? Ding. My phone vibrated with a message from my roommate. "Austin, you didn't actually head home for the holidays, did you? There's an economic law exam in 3 days, are you skipping it?" My hands, which were actively packing clothes, froze midair. I frantically opened the class group chat to verify the schedule. Sure enough, after scrolling through a few pages, I spotted the exact note regarding the economic law exam that I had completely overlooked. Perfect. This gives me an even more ironclad excuse to return. I dragged my suitcase downstairs, pressed the voice note button, and spoke in a serious, solemn register that still couldn't mask my absolute excitement. "Elena, wait for me." 2 hours later, the plane touched down, and I hopped into a taxi bound straight for campus. Along the way, I carefully drafted a script in my head, mapping out a solid 3-minute speech to thoroughly justify the botched delivery note and clarify everything that happened last night. By the time I arrived at the university grounds, it was exactly 2 p.m. Typically at this hour, Elena would head over to the study hall to review her coursework. I rushed back to my dorm room to drop off my luggage, styled my hair into a dashing look, and headed toward the library carrying a freshly purchased bag of small pastries. The second-floor study hall was quite packed, with a constant stream of students walking in and out to fetch water or grab their materials. I stood near the threshold and scanned the room for a while, but Elena's figure was nowhere to be found. Just as I was wondering where she could be, I suddenly heard someone call out her name from the far end of the hallway. "Elena! Was that guy just now Austin?" I froze. Turning my head, I spotted Elena standing there alongside her roommate. In Elena's hand was a beautifully designed bag of small pastries. I lowered my gaze to inspect my own hands. Yep, it was the exact identical brand and packaging as the one I was currently holding. Well, Elena, her roommate began to tease her. "Austin is the famously detached male god of our faculty. To think he's already been completely captivated by you too?" Because I was standing quite far away, I couldn't see the exact expressions on their faces. I could only catch the sound of their conversation. I actively waited for Elena's voice to ring out. But it didn't. She didn't utter a single syllable. Beside her, her roommate was still gushing. Even though Austin Wood is also incredibly handsome, what was that word used to describe him again? Oh, right, a fiercely enthusiastic puppy. He just doesn't quite match your energy. An absolute detached male god and a top-tier scholar like Julian is definitely a much better fit for you. I listened silently. From beginning to end, Elena didn't voice a single word of denial. It wasn't until they walked from the pantry toward the study hall entrance that I finally saw her expression. It turned out she was smiling. And the exact millisecond Elena's gaze collided with mine, the smile on her face instantly transformed into pure shock. I calmly looked straight at Elena for a few seconds before slowly parting my lips. What a coincidence! Elena and I originally met during the military training gala. She was 1 year ahead of me and served as the host that night, while I was the leader of the street dance club. At the conclusion of my performance, the entire stage plunged into total darkness as I stepped down. Unable to see clearly, I came remarkably close to tripping, but Elena swiftly grabbed hold of me. She and I collided fully. Looking down, I could see her eyes shining brilliantly even in the pitch-black space. Suddenly, the stage lights blazed back to life, the dazzling beams striking straight at my head. A stray strand of hair slid down from Elena's forehead. The crowd beneath the stage went dead silent for a brief second before an endless wave of whistling, applause, and cheering erupted across the venue. Elena supported my arm to steer me aside, moving us away from the heavy overhead spotlight, and asked if I had hurt myself in the stumble. Feeling a bit self-conscious, I was just about to say something when the massive spotlight suddenly shifted with a sharp whoosh, locking back onto us. Before we could process it, the stage director rushed over and spoke rapidly under his breath. There's a minor technical issue with the international faculty segment, so they can't take the stage just yet. We have a sudden gap of nearly 10 minutes. The director saw the amazing chemistry between you two just now and wants you to help fill the time by performing together. Personally, executing a repeat performance wasn't a major issue for me. But as a duo, I looked at Elena with a hint of hesitation. She deliberated for a few seconds before asking softly, "Do you know how to waltz?" I nodded. "Just the basics." Elena replied, "The opening segment of the Voices of Spring, 4 minutes and 35 seconds. The co-hosts will handle the remaining time." With that, she let out a smile, elegantly lifted the hem of her gown, and offered me a graceful curtsy. Amidst the roaring cheers of the entire student body, she bowed her frame slightly. "May I have the honor of this dance? All right, let's bring down the house together." The opening segment of the Voices of Spring, 4 minutes and 35 seconds, the rhythm was crisp, and the melody flowed flawlessly. I felt as if I had transformed into a sweeping titan, spinning continuously across the floor alongside Elena. Elena's dance steps were incredibly steady. Her hand rested gently on my waist. The exact millisecond she felt I was about to break rhythm, she would give me a subtle pinch. It was completely sharp and quietly authoritative. However, since my waltzing was far from seasoned, it was practically inevitable that I accidentally stepped on her feet a few times. Yet she didn't let out a single groan. Occasionally, a small fraction of her eyes would be obscured by the shifting shadows, making her pupils look exceptionally deep. The music flowed softly as the hem of her gown swirled dramatically, creating a massive visual impact, exuberant and absolutely magnificent. But the outfit itself wasn't particularly friendly to a dancer. Throughout those 4 minutes, I lost count of how many times the heavy metal chains on her costume whipped directly across my face. Even the area just beneath Elena's eyebrow had been rubbed into a prominent red mark. Despite this, she didn't even knit her brows once. At the absolute final turn of the song, I held her hand and executed a graceful, polished closing bow. Our timing was immaculate, halting precisely at the 5-minute mark. As Elena and I exited the stage, my heart was thumping violently. Only at that exact moment did I finally taste a subtle, exquisite wave of romantic flutter. "Austin," she murmured softly. Elena gestured toward our hands. It was only then that I realized I was still clutching her hand in a tight grip, without a single shred of intention to let go. "I am so sorry," I said, immediately releasing her. I pointed at the red mark beneath her brow, feeling rather apologetic. "And sorry about this too." Elena casually touched the spot, the corners of her lips curving into a playful smirk. "Don't worry about it. Though, I honestly thought I was going to leave one of my feet behind on that stage." Elena's tongue could certainly be sharp, but she was genuinely stunning. Then again, I considered myself reasonably handsome too. It wasn't as if I couldn't survive without a sharp-tongued girl like her. Until another occasion, when my roommates and I hit a bar for a few drinks. The exact millisecond I stepped past the threshold, I spotted Elena. Clad in a pristine white dress, she was seated right at the counter, her porcelain skin practically radiating light in the dim environment. Quite a few guys were clearly eager to make a move, naturally including myself. However, before I could even approach to say hello, Elena stood up, appearing ready to leave. A flashy, trendy guy nearby immediately lost his composure, running a hand through his hair as he confidently strode up to her. But within less than a minute, he was shot down flat. Refusing to surrender, the trendy guy pursued her, throwing out a few more lines. Elena simply stared back at him with absolute calm. While her face remained entirely expressionless, I could inherently sense that her patience was wearing dangerously thin. In that exact moment, I didn't even know what I was thinking. I raised my hand and called out to her. "Elena, I'm over here." The second the word slipped out, my roommates were stunned. The trendy guy was stunned. Even I was utterly stunned by my own audacity. But Elena wasn't stunned at all. She lifted her gaze, her eyes sweeping across the room, and locked onto me within a single fraction of a second. The very next moment, she began striding toward me, reaching her hand out in my direction as she walked. It was just like that night at the gala, but this time, it carried a subtle trace of warmth and affection. "Austin," she said, "I'm coming. They say you can never step into the same river twice, but you can absolutely fall for the exact same person twice. Even though Elena was a bit detached, held massive grudges, and possessed a remarkably sharp tongue, I genuinely liked her, and I was entirely willing to chase after her. Sometimes, I even harbored the fleeting impression that she might like me back a little. However, looking at the current situation in the hallway, those thoughts were likely nothing more than my own unrequited delusions. Locking eyes with a visibly shocked Elena, I chose not to utter another single word. I spun on my heel and walked away. As I passed by a trash can, I made a move to violently hurl the bag of pastries inside. But the bag merely spun a full circle along my fingers, remaining clamped tightly in my grip. Why should I take my anger out on the food? What did these delicious pastries ever do to Elena? Faintly, I thought I caught the sound of Elena calling out my name behind me. I immediately accelerated into a sprint. At a time like this, facing her would only make me feel incredibly suffocated, and running away with zero dignity was out of the question. I bolted all the way out of the library in a single breath before finally turning around to glance back. Elena hadn't chased after me at all. Feeling a massive surge of renewed anger, I dragged myself back to the dorm room with the pastries. My roommates stared at me in utter bewilderment. What the hell happened to your hair? Did you just survive a literal tornado? I stuffed a massive piece of pastry into my mouth, chewing furiously. Starting from this exact day, if I ever proactively initiate contact with Elena Evans again, I am an absolute dog. And then, 3 days later, the economic law exam arrived. The exact millisecond I stepped past the threshold of the lecture hall, I completely lost my composure. Elena was unluckily serving as our exam proctor. From the moment the test commenced, I felt a chilling draft hitting my back. I didn't dare lift my head to steal a single glance toward the podium. It clearly wasn't as if I had done anything wrong, yet this bizarre, creeping sensation of guilt was remarkably overwhelming. The moment I finalized my paper, I didn't want to linger for a single additional second. I stood up to hand in my exam. As I placed the sheets onto the podium, Elena instructed me to sign the roster. Seizing the window while I was leaning forward, she breathed a sentence directly against my ear. "Wait for me outside." I froze. Her voice had been so incredibly faint that I almost dismissed it as a literal hallucination. Yet, the moment I stepped out of the lecture hall, I still found myself uselessly lingering in the corridor, waiting. Naturally, this had absolute zero relation to Elena. I was strictly just waiting around because the exam block was over. Time flew by, and before long, the exam officially concluded. Hearing the final bell, an unusual wave of anxiety hit me. I took a deep breath and straightened my posture slightly. The lecture hall doors swung open, and my classmates poured out, celebrating. I poked my head into the room and spotted Elena standing by the podium, neatly organizing the exam papers. Seeing me peer in, Elena let out a gentle smile, a soft, warm expression that looked identical to her smile in the corridor from 3 days ago. A bitter twinge hit my chest. I muttered to myself, "Wow, her smile is basically a public commodity. How can she flash it so easily to just anyone?" Just as the thought crossed my mind, someone tapped me lightly on the shoulder. I looked up to see an undeniably handsome guy standing before me. He was wearing a sleek black jacket and clear-framed glasses, radiating an effortlessly cool, detached aura. "Excuse me," he said with a brief smile. "I'm looking for Elena." Beside us, a few students gasped quietly. "Oh my God, it's Julian Vance. He's incredibly handsome. Hey, senior, can we get your contact info?" I stood there, slightly dazed. So this was Julian. Describing him as a detached male god was completely spot on. He was the textbook definition of a smart, sharp-looking guy. A wave of unreadable emotion washed over me, and I slowly took a step back. But before I could find my footing, my arms suddenly tensed as someone firmly grabbed me. It was Elena. She was clamping down on my arm with one hand while cradling the stack of exam papers with the other. She stared blankly at Julian, her voice dropping into a flat, exasperated register. "What do you want?" Julian's gaze flicked back and forth between the two of us before he offered an innocent shrug. "Can't I come look for you just to catch up?" I had zero intention of lingering around to play the third wheel. Shaking my arm loose, I took another step back. "I'll take my leave first." "Austin." Elena made a sharp move to grab me again, but I managed to slip out of her reach. I hauled my spectating roommate along and immediately bolted. "Hey, Austin, are you seriously just running away like this?" my roommate complained, clearly disappointed that the drama was cut short. "You should have gone in there to mark your territory. Otherwise, hasn't all your time chasing after Elena been a complete waste?" I took a moment to reflect. Elena held a flawless GPA and consistently ranked first across the entire department. Then I thought about my own academic track record, consistently scraping by with bare passing grades at the very bottom of the ledger. Finally, my roommate's comments about how perfectly matched Elena and Julian looked flashed through my mind, leaving me completely speechless. If loving someone only systematically downgrades your own self-esteem, then my expert advice is to pivot and find someone else to love. My roommate scoffed at my sudden philosophical defeatist attitude. I defended my honor. "Don't look down on me. If you push me to my absolute limit, I can accomplish literally anything." "Oh yeah? Except for solving an advanced calculus problem," my roommate countered, causing the rest of the guys to burst into laughter. I aggressively slapped my phone onto the desk. "Believe what you want. As of today, Elena Evans is no longer placed on a pedestal in my life." My roommates offered a chorus of sarcastic applause. Suddenly, one of them looked up from his screen, eagerly waving his phone. "Hey, Austin. That gorgeous senior from the fine arts faculty who had eyes on you before just invited you out for a mixer. So, are you going or what?" I paused for a second to recall who she was. Ah, right, the campus queen bee from the fine arts faculty who famously went through a new boyfriend every single month. Some guys might say no with their mouths, but their bodies are entirely transparent. My roommates began to ruthlessly mock me as I headed back to my desk. "Oh, I don't like Elena anymore. Please. You're clearly just desperately waiting around for her to turn her head and throw you a scrap of attention." Hearing them frame it that way made me feel like an absolute pushover. I ground my teeth. "We're going. Why wouldn't we go? Whoever backs out now is a literal dog." Consequently, when Friday rolled around, I showed up right on time at the campus gates. The fine arts senior who had coordinated the mixer spotted me, her eyes immediately lighting up as she aggressively waved me over. "Austin, you actually made it." I nodded, quietly sizing her up. She pulled off the pure, delicate, innocent flower aesthetic flawlessly, and her voice was incredibly soft. She definitely possessed the raw potential of a high society queen bee. Furthermore, being an art major, her fashion sense and styling were impeccable. Yet, she still couldn't quite hold a candle to Elena. Right as the thought crossed my mind, the space directly in front of me suddenly plunged into a dark shadow. I froze. Instinctively pivoting my head 45 degrees, a remarkably familiar face filled my field of vision. It was Elena. Clad in a sleek black trench coat, her pitch-black eyes were locked securely onto me in a piercing glare. Her features practically radiated a freezing, intensely displeased aura. "Austin, what exactly are you looking at?" The absolute millisecond I locked eyes with Elena, a wave of guilt instinctively washed over me. But hearing her tone register as so incredibly freezing made me thoroughly uncomfortable. I shot her a quick glare, chose to ignore her completely, and shifted a step to the side. Elena, however, systematically shadowed my movement, refusing to leave even half a fraction of a gap between us. "Why have your text replies been so painfully slow these past few days? And whenever I invite you out, you consistently blow me off." Detecting a distinct trace of genuine grievance buried in her voice, my heart softened just a tiny fraction. But right as I was about to open my mouth to respond, Julian Vance suddenly materialized beside her. He was sporting a jacket styled almost identically to Elena's. Standing shoulder to shoulder with her, he flashed a bright smile first at me, then at Elena. "We meet again." Suddenly, all desire to speak completely vanished from my throat. Right at that exact second, the fine arts senior stepped up to my side. It turned out she and Elena were already acquainted. After exchanging brief, curt nods, she turned her head toward me, her tone instantly shifting into a remarkably sweet, deliberate register. "Little Austin, it's been a while." I offered a smile. "Yeah, it's been a while." Beside us, Elena's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "Did you just call him Little Austin?" I let out a cold sneer in my head. If you aren't going to call me that, there are plenty of other people who gladly will. Fortunately, our rides pulled up at that exact moment, sparing me from navigating the suffocatingly tense atmosphere. Everyone made a move toward the vehicles. The fine arts senior followed closely behind, intending to slip into the same car as me, but Elena abruptly stepped in, blocking her path entirely. Where do you think you're going? The senior clicked her tongue in sharp annoyance. I don't believe that's any of your business, Junior. Elena froze, shifting her gaze back to me, her voice dropping to a low register. Austin, I actually wanted to explain what happened. But recalling her absolute silence back in the study hall corridor, I chose to stay silent myself. I knew acting this way was incredibly childish, but I simply refused to be the first to cave and lose all leverage in this relationship. The driver, who was also a student attending the mixer, chimed in to break the tension. We're heading to the commercial district for dinner and karaoke. Senior Elena, do you and Julian want to tag along? How things escalated to this point was honestly beyond me. At the dinner table, the fine arts senior sat to my left, while Elena took the seat to my right. To Elena's right sat Julian, who was casually enjoying the unfolding drama. It was the kind of chaotic seating arrangement where you couldn't even tell who was supposed to be the third wheel anymore. The fine arts senior peeled a shrimp and placed it into my bowl. Without even lifting her eyes, Elena interjected, "He's allergic to seafood." Feeling a bit self-conscious, the senior pivoted and poured a glass of canned peach juice for me. It was a brand that was perfectly sweet and tangy. Elena kept her head down, casually wrapping some shredded chicken and veggies with her chopsticks as she remarked in a flat tone. He doesn't like juice. He prefers dairy products. The senior bit her lip, clearly running out of patience. Elena calmly placed the wrapped shredded chicken right into my bowl and shot the senior a fleeting glance. Take your time with the veggies. Enjoy your meal. I grabbed my arm just as it was about to be brushed by the senior's shoulder, feeling a bit exasperated by the whole display. Taking a deep breath, I stood up and turned to the senior. Let's step outside for a moment. The senior let out a soft huff. Under Elena's bewildered gaze, she proudly turned on her heel and followed me out. However, I shattered her pride almost immediately. Standing in the hallway, I sincerely apologized to her, thoroughly explaining my real, messy reasons for coming to the mixer in the first place. After listening to my explanation, the senior looked at me with a deeply conflicted expression. I'm really not any less qualified than Elena. Why can't you just choose me? Hearing that, I stayed quiet for a long time before finally answering. Probably because she is Elena Evans. Just because it's her, I can't help but constantly naturally gravitate toward her. After seeing the senior off, I lingered outside to catch some fresh air before heading back to the private dining room. The exact millisecond I turned around, I spotted Elena standing a short distance behind me, silently watching my every move. Faced with a heavy silence, I turned to walk away, but before I could take even 2 steps, someone firmly pulled me back. Turning my head, I saw Elena had caught up. She tilted her head up to look at me, her eyes visibly rimmed with a faint, unreadable redness. After staring at me for a long time, she finally asked in a soft, quiet voice, "Austin, do you really not like me anymore?" I froze in my tracks. Before I could utter a single word, Elena continued to speak. Her voice was incredibly soft and husky, carrying a profound sense of both accusation and grievance. "But I've already fallen for you. I like the Austin who smiles so gently at me. I like the Austin who has those clever little sparks of intelligence. I like the Austin who sometimes acts just like a fiercely loyal, adorable puppy." Perhaps from our very first encounter, my gaze was already completely captivated by you. After that, no matter how hard I tried to suppress it, I just couldn't help but look at you directly. In reality, before this absolute moment, I had imagined Elena confessing her feelings to me countless times. I thought my eyes might well up with tears, that I would be overcome with excitement, or that I'd be so incredibly happy I wouldn't be able to resist wrapping her in a tight hug. But when this moment actually materialized, my absolute first reaction was utter bewilderment. This is Elena Evans we're talking about. How on earth could she deliver a textbook confession about falling for someone? It turns out you really should never let a person's breathtaking visual appearance blind your judgment. Seeing me remain completely tight-lipped, Elena visibly began to panic. She raised her hand, intending to grasp mine, but her palm hovered in midair before dropping back down. Ultimately, feeling entirely helpless, she called out to me, "Austin, you at least have to tell me what I did wrong." I pursed my lips. I don't like people who play the field. Elena's expression turned utterly bewildered. I'm not playing the field. I only like you. I suppressed the fierce urge to roll my eyes. Then what's the deal with Julian Vance? That day in the study hall corridor, you accepted the small bag of pastries he bought for you. Plus, when your roommate was shipping the two of you together, you didn't even utter a single word of denial. I heard the whole thing. The absolute second those words left my mouth, I noticed a sudden daze wash over Elena's features. A few seconds later, she pulled out her phone and aggressively dialed a number. I caught a clear glimpse of the contact name on her screen, "Good for nothing cousin." The call connected, and Julian's voice drifted through the speaker. "What's up?" Elena stared dead at me, since I was completely frozen in place, and ground her teeth fiercely. "There's a massive problem. Right now, this exact second, you are going to introduce yourself to Austin. And it needs to be the absolute most honest, direct introduction possible." On the other end of the line, Julian went dead silent for 2 seconds before flatly parting his lips. "Hey there, I'm gay." What kind of introduction was that? He's gay? So what? My eyes instantly bulged out of my head as I stared at Elena. Without even waiting for Julian to offer any further elaboration, she directly slammed the phone down to cut the call. Looking at me, her expression was a chaotic blend of amusement, annoyance, and pure grievance. "You didn't seriously think I was into Julian, did you? Setting aside the literal blood relation, our sexual orientations are completely incompatible. That day at the study hall, I specifically asked him to help me pick up that bag of pastries because I knew you were coming back to campus. The only reason I didn't verbally deny my roommate's shipping was because I caught a massive cold after rushing back from Capital City. My throat was so wrecked I could barely make a sound, so I had to minimize speaking to avoid being relentlessly mocked by him. Didn't you even notice my voice has been incredibly husky these past few days?" As she spoke, she suddenly remembered something, her gaze softening into a glare. "Of course you wouldn't know, because you systematically refused to see me at all these past few days." My jaw dropped. I stood entirely paralyzed for a long while before finally stammering, Then what were you smiling about?" "What?" "That day at the study hall, when she brought up Julian, what were you smiling about? You smiled so gently too." I pouted. The exact millisecond the accusation left my mouth, a soft laugh vibrated right in front of me. Looking down, my gaze collided directly with Elena's laugh-filled features. She looked up at me and asked softly, "Was it a smile like this?" I nodded like an absolute fool. Elena raised her hand, her fingertips gently brushing along my cheek, remarkably soft and tender, just like a spring breeze. "It was because I was thinking about you. Every time you cross my mind, I honestly can't help but smile." Oh my God. What on earth was this situation? A monumental, astronomical misunderstanding? I felt so incredibly embarrassed I wanted to curl up and die. Distorting my gaze to avoid eye contact with Elena, I let out a dry, awkward chuckle. "So that's how it was. Huh?" Elena stared dead at me, her fingers casually tracing light, rhythmic patterns across my chin. "And that's it?" I shifted my eyes back to her slightly. "What?" An expression of utter dissatisfaction crossed Elena's face as she applied a fraction of force to give my chin a firm pinch. "What do you mean, what?" "Austin, I literally just confessed my feelings to you, and this is how you react? You have to give me something here." The sharp pinch completely snapped me back to reality. I let out a huff. "As if my confessions to you have been few and far between. When you fell into that lake, I practically pulled an absolute hero saves the beauty move, and I didn't even forget to drop an 'I love you' while resuscitating you. Did you give me a proper reaction back then?" Elena let out a chuckle. "Fair point. All right then, Austin, from now on, let's flip the script. I'll be the one chasing after you, okay?" I was slightly dazed. "There's really no need for that, is there? We're practically ready to be wrapped up as a couple anyway. Don't go dragging down our progress milestone." As if reading my exact internal monologue, Elena lowered her gaze, her fingertips sliding with deliberate suggestion across the corner of my lips. "But can you at least give me a little bit of sweetness first, Austin?" I pursed my lips and muttered under my breath, "Well, when I was chasing you, I didn't exactly see you handing out a bunch of sweetness to me." Hearing this, Elena swiftly grabbed my hand, forcefully anchoring it right against her lower back. A half-smile played on her lips as she countered, "Are we really going to argue logistics right now? Austin, your sweetness was never something you needed me to hand out. You've already been proactively helping yourself to it. Am I wrong?" Feeling the profound, yielding softness resting directly beneath my palm, the internal alarms in my head were absolutely screaming. Yet, I fought with every fiber of my being to maintain a completely calm, unbothered exterior. "What kind of joke is that? Can we talk without getting physical?" Elena burst into a vibrant laugh. Suddenly, she locked her hand firmly around my chin, pushed up onto her tiptoes, and tilted her head up to plant a fierce kiss directly onto my lips. "You absolute little hypocrite." When Elena said she was going to chase after someone, she truly meant it, executing it with absolute seriousness. Ever since we returned from that mixer, she systematically functioned as a flawless, round-the-clock prospective girlfriend. Buying breakfast, catching movies, and organizing daily dates quickly became standard operating procedure. What left me even more astounded, however, was that she painstakingly compiled a master's study guide covering the core exam topics for all my major courses across the entire 4 years of university. When she handed over the massive, neatly bound stack of papers, I was utterly paralyzed. Is this seriously how top-tier scholars navigate romance? I reviewed the exam trends from the past few years and cross-referenced them with several professors and senior students, Elena explained. While it's remarkably comprehensive, you still can't rely strictly on this. You still need to pay close attention whenever the professors highlight key concepts during lectures. Elena patted my head gently. "If there's anything you don't grasp, you can consult me at any given moment." She paused to deliberate for a beat. "Also, regarding your CET4 English proficiency test, how did you perform this time? Do you anticipate a passing grade?" I slowly slid my frame down until I was lounging flat against the desk. "Zero knowledge." Elena remained entirely unbothered. "No matter. There is a substantial window before the next examination cycle, which leaves ample time for me to tutor you." Staring straight into Elena's serene features, I couldn't resist speaking up. "Elena, your approach to pursuing a guy is genuinely one of a kind. Other people focus strictly on dinners, dates, and gifting luxury seafood platters, yet you handsomely present me with a literal mountain of academic test prep." Elena let out a soft smile. "Then which approach do you naturally prefer?" I deliberately went silent, choosing not to offer an immediate response. Not catching an answer, Elena turned her head to look at me, her lips pursing slightly. "I previously overheard your roommates mentioning that you intended to pursue graduate school. Your academic ranking is incredibly vital. Don't fail any courses and study diligently. I already verified the logistics with the faculty advisors. The top 10 students in our department stand an excellent chance of securing a direct master's program exemption. I can certainly gift you luxury seafood platters too, Austin. It's just that I've always believed that providing you with a wide-open, brilliantly radiant future is infinitely better." I went quiet for a few seconds, an unpluggable wave of warmth flooding my chest. Feigning my usual goofy demeanor, I crooked my finger rhythmically at her. "Get over here. Lean in closer." Elena obligingly tilted her frame toward me, resting her chin directly onto the palm of my hand. Looking up at me from below, she bore a striking resemblance to an adorable, compliant kitten. "What's on your mind?" I leaned down and planted a quick kiss directly on the tip of her nose, my eyes crinkling into a cheerful grin. "You just speak so beautifully, I simply couldn't resist stealing a kiss." Elena's breath hitched slightly. A few seconds later, she smoothly flipped the script to seize the initiative. Leaning her weight into my space, she lowered her head to press a firm kiss right against the corner of my lips. "I don't just speak beautifully, I execute beautifully too." For people who didn't truly know Elena, they merely perceived her as a detached, gorgeous academic elite, blinding everyone with a massive layer of that brilliant ice queen filter. In reality, she possessed an intensely romantic streak, routinely orchestrating these tiny, unannounced, spontaneous surprises. I spent my entire days being so thoroughly pampered and doted on by her that I practically lost all sense of direction. My roommates, forced to ingest our relentless public displays of affection on a daily basis, were collectively driven to the absolute brink of insanity. Every single day, they'd aggressively vocalize their desire to drag the Civil Affairs Bureau straight to our dorm room so we could just get married already. Speaking of the Civil Affairs Bureau, a sudden revelation hit me out of nowhere. Technically, I still hadn't formally accepted Elena's confession yet. As it stood this exact second, she was still merely operating under the official title of my prospective girlfriend. Right as that thought ran through my mind, Elena's call materialized, telling me to get downstairs for dinner. Stepping out of the building, I spotted Elena clad in that exact same black trench coat. The hem of her coat billowed gracefully against the biting north wind, making her look incredibly elegant and breathtakingly beautiful. Refusing to let my absolute infatuation show on my face, I deliberately forced my gaze away and struck up a conversation. "I've been meaning to ask you this for a while. That coat looks remarkably identical to Julian's." Elena let out a curious hum. "Oh really? My mom and my aunt bought them together when they went shopping a while back, so they probably just picked out nearly identical styles." She knitted her brows slightly as she spoke. "Does it really look that similar? I know those two are close cousins, so they probably didn't pay much attention to the pattern. Don't worry, it's not like it's a perfect match, they just look vaguely similar at a glance." Suddenly, Elena clicked her tongue in disapproval. Planting her hands on my shoulders, she forcefully maneuvered my frame back toward the warmth of the dormitory lobby. I stood there, completely dazed. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to quickly change my clothes." "Wait right here." "Oh, wait. There's really no need." Before the words could fully clear my throat, she had already dashed off into the distance. True to her word, Elena returned exactly 1 minute later. This time, she was sporting a sleek black miniskirt, showing off a pair of stunningly long legs that I could happily admire for an entire calendar year. Swallowing hard, I watched as she casually leaned in and gave the corner of my lips a highly practiced tap. My eyes narrowed into slits as I stared dead at her. "Why did you get all dressed up out of nowhere? Is there some sort of covert operation happening?" Elena let out a soft cough. "Is it really that obvious? So there really is a hidden agenda." Despite my probing questions, Elena stubbornly refused to spill a single detail, simply dragging me along into the waiting car. The moment the vehicle rolled to a halt, I surveyed our surroundings in absolute bewilderment. This was the exact same forest park where we had gone boating before. Stepping out of the car, Elena laced her fingers through mine and guided me inside. Her timing was meticulously calibrated, as we immediately intersected with a small, whimsical parade. I stood along the curb for a solid 10 minutes, entirely stunned when one of the costumed event performers suddenly pressed a vibrant bouquet of flowers right into my hands. "Is this parade normally a part of the itinerary?" I asked, completely taken aback. Elena, who was actively snapping photos of me with her camera, let out a bright smile upon hearing my question. "Maybe it's a special edition exclusively for today." Staring at Elena's radiant expression, I inherently pieced together what was actually happening. But instead of exposing her grand plan, I simply offered a soft, knowing murmur. Our dinner destination was situated directly behind the boating lake, a charming 2-story pavilion where she had secured a private dining room with an unparalleled view. Looking down, the lake stretched out beautifully. Looking up, the mountain peaks framed the horizon. Further out, the crimson glow of the evening sunset painted the sky, causing my heart to thump violently against my ribs. Even my hand holding the chopsticks began to tremble slightly. Noticing my nervousness, Elena smoothly transitioned to the seat beside me, capturing my trembling hand within her warm palms. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. I decided to be entirely transparent. "I can inherently sense that you are about to confess your feelings to me, so I'm getting a bit incredibly nervous." Elena froze for a fraction of a second before bursting into a vibrant laugh. She lowered her head to plant a tender kiss onto the back of my hand, letting out a gentle breath. "Austin, aren't normal people supposed to play dumb and act completely oblivious in situations like this?" I looked straight into her eyes. "Well, I'm not just anyone." Elena let out a soft chuckle, her gaze securely locked onto mine. Her eyes beautifully mirrored the warm hues of the fading sunset, brimming with an unhidden wave of joy and profound affection. You are Austin Wood, and that is precisely why I love you so fiercely. The exact millisecond the words left her lips, a spectacular display of fireworks suddenly erupted right outside our window. The sky had gradually darkened, leaving only a lingering thread of warm twilight along the distant horizon. As the fireworks cascaded one after another, the entire world was instantly bathed in a gentle, profoundly romantic tapestry of colors. Austin, I love you. Will you officially do me the honor of becoming my boyfriend? Staring at the gorgeous girl standing right in front of me, I couldn't resist letting out a massive smile. Elena Evans was a woman who consistently executed exactly what she set out to do. Yes. After a brief pause, I leaned in closer and secretly whispered into her ear, to be completely honest with you, those 5 liquor chocolates from the other night didn't actually make me drunk at all. Elena burst into a playful laugh. Pushing up onto her tiptoes, she brought her lips right against mine. To be completely honest with you, I know how to swim perfectly well. I could have easily made it back to shore without your heroic rescue. Playing dumb and acting helpless was strictly because I wanted a golden excuse to get closer to you. She murmured against my lips, it was always simply because I loved you. A massive grin broke across my face as I captured her lips in a firm kiss amidst the brilliant glow of the fireworks. My palm pressed with a comfortable, deliberate weight against her lower back. Stealing a brief breath in the middle of our kiss, I whispered in a raspy register, so, can I finally taste a piece of peach tonight? Elena wrapped her arms securely around my shoulders, pulling our frames even closer together until there was zero gap left between us. Her soft, velvet voice drifted directly into my ear. From this exact moment onward, it's entirely yours for the taking.